Hello and good evening. So, it's been a day. Starting the intro with this screenshot of Lord of the Rings scene that I felt appropriate to start this evening's share around. A journey to the City of the Dead, or a City of the Dead, perhaps one of millions. I just finished watching coverage over the White House inaugural event, shooter being apprehended, etc., etc. And all the glazing occurring, of course, around Trump. Never mind that he's a genocide enabler that's killed tens of thousands of children, mothers, fathers, uncles, aunts, cousins, nieces, nephews, grandmothers and grandfathers, entire families, family lineages wiped off the face of the earth. Never mind his illegal war in Iran that began with the mass slaughter of a girls' school, and mainly that was because a lot of the girls attending that school were daughters of Iranian military. So I have some thoughts I want to share tonight, but I want to open it up with this scene where Aragon, the dead don't know that the sword has been repaired. Not that they would keep up on things like that, but nonetheless, I guess the last time they understood anything about that sword was when it was shattered. And so the men of Dunharrow were cursed and are still on the earth. They were called the Oath Breakers. And men of the White Mountains. And so he's coming back to gain their proxy services, and he can free them from their curse. Of course, none of them know this, and Aragon is a man that was brought into the role of who he is in Lord of the Rings because he already is possessing a level of dignity and courage and rock solid proof of character, none of which President Trump has, nor those around him, enabling him. And so I'll kind of move into that a little bit tonight, but I just wanted to show you on a mythological level a enactment or an archetype of the hero that is inside every man and woman. So Aragon is he's not a knight in shining armor. He has deliberations, and he chooses his battles very carefully. He's not a reactionary. He doesn't get himself into situations that he doesn't first calculate, and has got a pretty good idea of the risks, etc. Unlike the white knight syndrome, where it's more of a knee-jerk situation, and of course that's a very different movie than The Lord of the Rings. So here it goes. Let's take a look at this.
Where's he going? Don't know this one.
Into Plato's cave.
Where does he leave on the eve of battle?
So even the dwarf is reluctant, although he basically lives underground.
Who enters my domain? One who will have your allegiance. The dead do not suffer the living to pass. You will suffer me.
I always get goosebumps in the scene.
Shut. Now you must die. I summon you to fulfill your oath. None but the King of Gondor may command me. That line was broken. It has been remade. Fight for us and regain your honor. I am Isildur. Fight for me, and I will hold your oaths fulfilled. And I will release you from this living death. Stand, traitors!
Only the skulls, not the rest of the bones. Interesting. And he was able to touch the leader of the White Mountains.
We fight.
So that's it. We fight. That's a good place to pause it. Of course, if you're familiar, I don't want to give any spoilers, but this ghost army is unstoppable gauntlet. Nothing in the third dimension can affect them ultimately. I guess in all fairness, it's probably best that they have an open and closed one task contract. Otherwise, Aragon's ego might be tempted to, who knows, do strange things with such an unstoppable situation. So I'm going to transition back over to my solo screen here. Okay, so I wanted to share some thoughts tonight around dignity, education, empathy, conscience, proof of character. These are things that are not necessarily reserved for old people or folks leaning into their 50s and 60s and later golden years. These qualities can be tapped into, at least surface level wise, in your 20s and 30s. I think there's a few biological roadblocks in early ages around really cognizing what these things imply and how to feel them, how to embody them, and ultimately, I'd say if you do feel them when you're younger, it's something kind of abstract and it doesn't really English itself out until you're a bit older and you've been sledgehammering the metal ingot into some useful tool, but you have to sledgehammer first and have an anvil willing to take the blows and a foundation that can absorb them between the anvil, what it's mounted to, and the floor. So all that stuff has to be built, including the sledgehammer and the muscles to do it. And what I'm noticing, not that I've not noticed it, but I guess it's more acute these days with the far right and evangelical mindset and Zionist mindset and even the Democrats. I mean, the Democrats and Republicans all pretty much are owned by the corporate elite and the Epstein class. Not to generalize it at all and make it sound like some sort of fairy tale, like, let's just say that you can take these individuals case by case situation and prove to yourself what I'm implying here. Anytime you put individuals into a grouping, it becomes abstract and easily dismissed as a far-fetched idea or something too big to fail, or it gets sort of mythological on the level of not really being able to approach it as an individual, one-to-one. So I'd advise that if you want to understand the Epstein class, start with individuals and study their biographies and in some cases their autobiographies, and just take one or two and do a thorough examination of their background, their contributions, their deeds, etc., and then multiply that by several thousand. Then you'll understand that there's an inner circle and an outer circle. And the inner circle is sort of transient because it only forms when there's a gathering. And the outer circle is day-to-day life, what these individuals do unto themselves as somewhat solo individuals versus what they do when there's more than three gathered. It becomes something else. And to understand this phenomenon is going to be important in the future in decoupling the ego and the dual identities of these players. Because ultimately they have two identities, at least. And one is when they're in private, and the other is when they're in public. And eventually, a choice will need to be made on the mental health crisis level. You're either going to be two people or simply one, and it's not so simple. It's tricky. We're taught at a very early age how to be two people. How to get what we want because we're not getting what we need, and how to need what we want because what we need we can't cherish because we don't have it. So it's a slippery one where we learn to compartmentalize our identities into two categories: the wishful thinker and the solitary desirer or wanter. And these two forces, they play out, they war against one another. There's a reason Trump is a pathological liar. And that's how much the truth affects him. He spites the truth by lying. And that is his truth. That he is overriding the truth by another version of it to spite it. And that is his, or at least one of his, mental health aspects. So dignity, courage of character, compassion, empathy, conscience, particularly conscience. I've noticed that whenever far-right politicians and even Democrats that try to play both sides or show themselves as partisan in some way, they get panicky when you question, that you give a question to their conscience. It's like getting kryptonite close to Superman. They begin to shut down and become defensive, and I think that's very curious, almost paranormal, and I won't get too much into my paranormal ideas around that, but I do think that behavior is it's very mysterious, only because we don't understand what's going on in between the lines. Psychologists, psychiatrists, they label it as, oh, well, he's denying, or he's deflecting, or oh, see there, he just did a coping mechanism or transference, etc., etc. But putting a name to something is not understanding it, or even understanding how it happens, not why, but how. And labeling an effect is not securing and understanding the cause. So conscience is the doorway to self-accountability, self-observation, self-awareness, self-esteem, self-respect, dignity, courage of character, and in many of these politicians, corporate CEOs, shareholders, Wall Street players, conscience is simply not at home. It's just not there. And if it is, they're conflicted, and they have very strong coping mechanisms to keep conscience and remorse as far apart as possible, or a sense of guilt, or at least a lingering sense of guilt. They may have moments of guilt, but it doesn't haunt them, which is maybe another video conversation, where how it is that some people are haunted by their conscience versus others who can get over it within 30 to 60 seconds and keep moving. Some people dwell and ruminate and are simply tasked with almost a kind of OCD level of self-inspection and getting to the root of things, and it will not leave them alone until they figure it out and straighten it out. Whereas others can seemingly, they collect tens of thousands of crooked pictures, and even have crooked museums for crooked pictures, as if it's normal. So we live in a very peculiar world, and it's getting even more peculiar. I remember what occurred after October 7th. What Israel has done to Gaza, and now what they're doing to Lebanon, and seemingly plan to do with Iran. But I think Iran's going to be a very different situation, because China and Russia will most likely step in. And if they step in, then Israel, they may not make it to 2027. Because in Israel, there's a kind of a too big to fail mentality going on. And the way I see it, the America, Britain, and Israel are basically a triad. And they simply need victims in order to feel good about themselves. They need to create an other, an enemy. Never mind that the thing inside of them that needs that is the enemy and the only enemy. They can't live with themselves in peace. They can't get down to business, the business of actually being honorable men, dignified, intelligent, self-aware, honorable men who are haunted by their conscience daily and build their character by approaching the ghosts of their conscience and signing contracts with the dead. So tonight I just wanted to put some thoughts out there around character, dignity, basically virtues that are not reserved for poetry or wishful thinking or King Arthur and the Round Table, etc. These are real forces in the human psyche, in the mind, and the mind is where everything comes from. All this transience, and also our legacies, what we leave behind the children, when we can. Many children are erased from existence by well, I guess you could call them monsters, but that sounds a little too good to be true. Let's just say that there are men and women on this planet who are abnormal. They have children, but there's a Jekyll and Hyde situation going on where the level of indifference to dehumanize an ethnic group of people to such a degree that they televise a genocide and call it right of defense. It is not only abnormal, it's paranormal. Something else is going on. No human being alone, in my opinion, can live a dual existence like that without coming apart at the seams very quickly. Most people, when they do something contradictory to their character, regret it, and sometimes even can't live with themselves, quite literally. And then they transition because they simply can't task living with the shadow or shadows that have been created by that mistake. But we're talking about men and women who aren't making mistakes. They're making deliberate decisions that cause the lives of hundreds of thousands to be wiped off the face of the earth. George W. Bush did this. Obama did this. Biden did this. Trump does it. The next president will do it too. 75+% of the Israeli population does it. The UAE does it. Saudi Arabia as well. The Yemeni people, the Lebanese, the Palestinian, now the Iranian people. So there's something going on that is deeply disturbing and inhuman. And inside the nucleus, like the individual who's involved in this, when you isolate them and you start to interrogate them, or you get them cornered in some way and you question their integrity or their conscience, they jump out of their skin. It's almost as if something like they're along for the ride. And if you try to wake them up, they're very irritable. They get very irritable and start moaning and groaning and flipping and flopping, burying their face in the pillow, and pull the covers over their head. You cannot disturb their comfort. Comfort is one of the at least top 3 priorities, is comfort. So here you have a living embryo of undeniably an inhuman thing that is steering the boat. And the individual is the passenger in some way. And I'm not saying that this is an excuse or that they're not cognitive. I feel that they are responsible, but not like a regular person would be responsible for involuntary manslaughter or a bad Monday or a crime of passion or a psychotic break. There's a journey occurring with this person, and it seems like there's other things along for the ride. It would be for another time. I'll get into it, but it's definitely not as clear cut as the criminal justice system makes it out to be. He did this, he's guilty, therefore. It's more complex than that. And the level of denial and the level of obfuscation and defensiveness that comes up when you get one of these people alone and you start asking them questions that question their character, their morality, their ethics. Things get very weird. It's almost like they're talking in third person oftentimes, or from a distance. Something to think about. It's getting a bit late. I've had a pretty intense day, I must say. Kind of find it surprising to be making a video tonight. It is 1:47 in the morning. And I am getting close to getting the other cam up and going, just in case you're wondering. And watching a lot of tutorials and different details around the camera. And I think by Monday night, Tuesday, I'll have it dialed in. So sculpture is on its way. I just want to make sure that it's as good as I can get it, and look forward to doing some more videos around that. And I want to show you something that I made. Well, I half made it out of parts. So when I bought this pewter business a long time ago, I think it was like 8, 9, maybe even 10 years ago, along with it came a good 2, maybe 3,000 pounds of pewter. About, I would say, 95% of that, maybe even 98%, I've melted down into ingots. But in that cache of items, tens of thousands of like old school fantasy stuff, dragons and little people, soldiers, and swords and skulls and Ganeshas and little Venuses, various iconography, Viking stuff, and I have a lot of the molds, the vulcanized rubber molds for a spin caster, and have the spin caster too. So some of these objects I still have in theory in the molds, but the objects themselves I basically melted down. And so this object, I call it the winged Buddha. So the wings are, I have the mold for them, and they are dragon wings. And the Buddha, I'm pretty sure I have the mold for him too. And then I composed this piece because I like paradoxical iconography, where you see something that opposes itself, and yet it just is, which means that the mind, it's routinely an either or, good or bad. But there is a space in between the two hemispheres where, under various circumstances, those two opposing ideologies can meet and blend into one. And one can experience this. And so objects like this remind me and also kind of create a little bit of that when I see it. So this is the winged Buddha. There he is. And it's not just a winged Buddha, but it's the laughing Buddha. Give you a better picture. Let's see. My war-torn hands here. So that's the back. I think the wings are a pretty decent scale. That's one thing that bugs me about statuary that has wings, that oftentimes the wings are too small, would never lift the actual physical body that they're on. But these, I'm pretty sure they'd lift him. Although he's a little chubby, but I think he could get off the ground and stay up pretty good with these. And remember, the way these things are folded, the wings, they're not fully outstretched, so they still have at least another third to go. And the detail is really good. These vulcanized old school rubber molds, you can cast thousands and thousands of objects in them, and they retain their detail because the vulcanized rubber is extremely hard and doesn't. I mean, it will wear out after a while, but it maintains its detail in the mold for a lot of castings. And so, on that note, may the winged Buddha visit you calmly if you wish it. And all my best to you. Thank you for supporting the channel. Give a like, subscribe, share the channel. Until we meet again. Good night and good morning.